July in Paris. 10,000 athletes are floating down the Seine for the opening ceremony of the 2024 Olympics. Just a few hundred meters away in this McDonald's, several employees are flipping burgers and asking if you want fries with that. Who do you think makes more money, the athlete or the McDonald's worker? Remember, these athletes are filling stadiums, creating a spectacle that the whole world wants to see and that generates billions of sponsorship money. And yet, it's the McDonald's worker that earns almost 50% more than the average athlete. The International Olympic Committee gives absolutely no money to Olympians, even if they win gold. But why not? And how do athletes make money? It turns out that the answer is more complicated than you'd think, and deeply rooted in the history of modern sports. Welcome to Athletic Interest and the business of being an Olympic athlete. This video is sponsored by Shopify. To fully understand the business of athletes today, we need to look back at the evolution of the games and its prices. The ancient Greeks believed that the games were created by their gods. After hearing about the birth of Zeus, Heracles and his 4 brothers raced to Olympus to greet him. Zeus was impressed and awarded an olive wreath to the victor. The foot race became symbolic of worshipping the gods. It was also believed that the gods spent a lot of their time atop Mount Olympus wrestling and jumping. Soon there were 23 disciplines represented at each Olympics, which were held once every 4 years. The early athletes had no Nike sponsorship, so many decided to compete naked. The first official winner of an Olympic event was Koroibos of Elis, a baker turned Olympic runner. His reward was a simple olive leaf crown and a palm branch. Not exactly life-changing, but he had earned the admiration of the gods. What else could he want? Olympic winners did get other rewards. Wealthy supporters would often donate cash prizes, VIP tickets to special events, and lifetime passes to dining clubs. Some athletes got statues in Olympus. Most were given tax breaks and enjoyed a life of celebrity. Being an Olympic champion was good business, but the cost of entry was high. The first Olympic champion may have been a baker, but most that followed were sons of wealthy landowners and traders. Getting to the Olympics required an athlete to train all year round and compete in up to 300 smaller events across the Mediterranean. Only the rich had the time and money to get to the top of their game. The ancient Olympics ended under Roman rule. After a 1500-year gap, this guy founded the International Olympic Committee and organized the first modern Olympic Games. To remember the old days, Athens was the first host city. Much like in ancient Greece, winners were awarded olive branches. But the modern games also introduced the medal system. Confusingly, the winner received a silver medal while the runner-up received a copper medal. The third place was unrewarded. The gold, silver and bronze system was only introduced in 1906. Like the ancient athletes, Olympic champions received no money. This is thanks to Coubertin's other invention, a rule that would shape the lives of athletes for generations and change the way sports operate until today. To compete in the Olympics, you had to be an amateur. That meant no sponsorship contracts and no money for participation. A rule that was upheld strictly. Take James Francis Thorpe, winner of the decathlon and pentathlon at the 1912 Stockholm Games. Notice his mismatched shoes. Thorpe's own pair disappeared from his bag before the race. He borrowed one replacement from a competitor and found another in the trash. Neither shoe was the correct fit. After seeing Thorpe's performance, the Swedish king labeled the American the greatest athlete in the world. Thorpe returned home as a celebrity, until a chance interview with one of his former coaches. The coach mentioned that Thorpe had briefly played baseball for a semi-pro team, earning $5 per game. So the Amateur Athletics Union challenged his gold medals because he was not a genuine amateur athlete. Thorpe was found guilty. Authorities entered his house, removed his medals, and sent them back to Stockholm. Thorpe can be considered a victim of the IOC's desire to keep the games pure. Money was almost viewed as the first performance-enhancing drug, a powerful tool for motivating or corrupting an athlete. Although, from another angle, it just looks like they hated poor people. The IOC's early idea of amateurism was modeled from English upper-class sportsmanship. Rules designed to keep the lower and middle class from competing with the elites. The traditional Henley boat race excluded any man that received money as a mechanic, artisan, or laborer. That left the aristocrats and their rich children. As the Olympic movement grew, the traditional wealthy European athlete was replaced, but the strict amateur rules still remained. Brands did start giving free equipment to athletes. Adidas gave shoes to Jesse Owens, the same shoes that helped him break records in Berlin, to the annoyance of one notable spectator. Being on the feet of champions brought the likes of Adidas and Puma international attention. This was a bit of a gray area. The IOC didn't allow personal sponsorship, but overlooked free equipment. But in 1968, Puma took things too far. Tommy Smith and John Carlos had just completed a gold-silver finish for the US in the 200 meters. When the national anthem played on the podium, both athletes bowed their heads and raised a gloved fist. An iconic protest against racism. But that wasn't the duo's only iconic moment. At the start of the medal ceremony, Carlos also removed his shoes and raised them above his head. The Puma logo purposely pointed to the waiting cameras. Perfect marketing for Puma. It was also for free, right? IOC rules are very clear on paying athletes. Except Puma did pay. In fact, Adidas and Puma were secretly paying athletes thousands to wear their shoes during the games. This became the worst-kept secret in Olympic history. If the IOC investigated, most medal winners would have been disqualified. So the IOC simply ignored it. But it knew this was the end of an era for amateur athletics. In '71, the IOC relaxed the requirement that an Olympian must be an amateur. In the '80s, they even allowed athletes to have sponsorship contracts. This marked a huge turning point in professional sports. The IOC could simply no longer afford the traditional rejection of economic gain. The Montreal Games in '76 made a loss of almost $1 billion. Facing bankruptcy, the IOC came up with a brilliant new invention: exclusive sponsorship deals. The Games have had sponsorship since the very beginning, but for many years, anyone that wanted to become a sponsor could arrange some sort of deal. In theory, both Pepsi and Coca-Cola could sponsor the same Games. The IOC began signing partners for specific categories. Coca-Cola became the official and exclusive beverage partner of the Olympics. The IOC now had less sponsors, but each partnership was far more valuable. The '84 Games in Los Angeles show this switch, making a $200 million profit. The organizer even appeared on the cover of Time magazine. The Olympics was finally big business. So surely a lot of this money has trickled down to the athletes. Not exactly. In an Olympic cycle, the IOC earns more than $7 billion. The directors share about $50 million in salary. Athletes get nothing. Well, at least not directly from the IOC. So how do Olympic athletes make money today? They have to rely on three sources of income: salary, prize money, and sponsorship. Let's look at them in more detail. Each of these can vary, depending on which country you are representing. Singapore offers $700,000 to any athlete that wins gold. Triumphant Russian athletes are given free houses and luxury cars. And yet, most of the major nations offer far less to their athletes. US gold medal winners receive $37,000. If you become a ninja warrior, you get $1 million. Instead of prize money, some nations offer yearly salaries to allow athletes to focus on training. Despite representing the biggest economy on Earth, some top US athletes only receive a few $100s per month. Athletes that want to make it to the Olympics are forced to look for other ways to make money. Many turn to brands for support. This has led to a large imbalance in sports. Let's take two athletes as examples: Usain Bolt and Megan Kelmer, both medal winners at London 2012. Bolt is one of the most popular athletes of all time. This comparison may seem a little unfair, but it shows the huge difference in earnings between athletes, despite them both attending the same Olympics. In 2012, when Bolt was arguably at his height, he earned more than $20 million. The majority of this money came from Bolt's sponsorship deals, including a massive $9 million per year from Puma. Bolt also earned a few $100,000 in prize money and up to $250,000 per track meet. While Bolt is living in mansions and driving fast cars, Megan Kalmer is living the exact opposite life. Kalmer shares a $1,000 per month house with a fellow athlete. When her old pickup truck breaks down, she has to find a mechanic that takes monthly payments. For her Olympic bronze in 2012, she received $10,000, but not before the government took their cut. Shortly after returning from London, a monthly stipend from the US Olympic Committee was cut to a grand total of $0. She now works a part-time desk job and grows her own food to get by. Olympic rowers, even those with medals, do not get much attention from sponsors. Nike, Adidas and Puma save their marketing money for football and basketball. For every Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps or Simone Biles, there are thousands of Megan Kalmers. More than a decade after London 2012, and 5 decades since the IOC allowed athletes to be professional, the gap between rich and poor in sport has barely changed. The majority of athletes around the world do not consider themselves financially stable. In the US, the figure is 80%. Funding from Olympic committees for athlete support is being cut each year. Meanwhile, the cost of equipment, nutrition, training and travel only increases. So some athletes are forced to look for other employment. There are now sheep farmers, mechanics and Buddhist priests that spend their spare hours training for Olympic gold. The uncomfortable truth is that most professional athletes earn less than the lowest level McDonald's worker. This is why more and more athletes are starting their own businesses, to get less dependent on salaries and create something beyond their sporting career. And this is where today's video sponsor Shopify comes in. We've made a whole series about athletes who are using Shopify to build their brand, from Cristiano Ronaldo to Serena Williams. And we also use Shopify ourselves to offer you our legendary athletic interest socks. From setting up a store to tracking inventory and processing payments, Shopify makes it super easy, even for those without technical skills. And it got even easier now with Shopify Magic, an artificial intelligence designed for commerce. It helps you create professional product images or write better product descriptions. If we want our socks in front of a different background, no problem. We hope this got you inspired, and if it did, make sure to check shopify.com/athleticinterest or the link in the description and build your business today. Thanks a lot for supporting us. Now let's get back to understanding the financial landscape of Olympic athletes. The Olympics are only every 4 years. Yes, the athletes have reached the pinnacle, but they are only at the center of attention once every 4 years, for a few weeks. Olympic committees need to spread their funding across hundreds of sports and thousands of athletes. A lot of this money comes from sponsors. They need public interest to maintain these sponsors. That means prioritizing support for the sports and athletes that engage the most people. It's the harsh reality. These athletes need to offer a return on investment. It works the same with athlete sponsorship. Adidas or Nike can only really activate their partnerships every 4 years. For the rest of the time, the athlete's exposure is worth far less. That's why even the biggest Olympic athletes don't get as much as the biggest footballers or basketball players. These guys have more opportunities each year to win when the world is watching. To make matters worse, the Olympics has Rule 40. This was the IOC's reaction to a little marketing game that Nike was playing in the 80s and 90s. Adidas was the official and exclusive sportswear partner of the Olympics. So Nike is technically blocked from making any advertising that links to the games. Not that this has stopped Nike's marketing team. They perfected the art of ambush marketing. At the '96 games in Atlanta, Nike put up billboards around the stadium and handed out Nike flags to spectators. There was barely a TV screen that didn't show the Nike logo. An easy way to do ambush marketing at an Olympics is to have an Olympic athlete in your advert. People instantly make the connection without Nike referencing the games. The IOC realized this and introduced Rule 40. This blocked athletes from featuring in any advertising with a non-Olympics partner for the duration of the games. With one decision, the IOC had cut off every athlete's biggest earning opportunity. At the moment when athletes are most valuable to sponsors, they are quite literally banned from advertising and making money. But in 2019, a German court decided that Rule 40 could no longer apply to German athletes. The court said it was unfair for athletes to be blocked from maximizing their earnings, while the IOC failed to give them a share of the sponsorship money they were supposedly protecting. In response, the IOC decided to loosen Rule 40. Paris 2024 will be the first games where athletes are allowed to feature in non-official adverts during the games, although still with some conditions. One argument for removing Rule 40 is the idea that athletes should be free to use any tool available to build their personal brands during the Olympics. An audience on social media is a proven way for athletes to earn money outside of their sport. Take Alicia Schmidt. Schmidt represented Germany at Tokyo 2020 as a backup in the relay. She didn't even compete and managed to gain 500,000 followers. Her behind-the-scenes posts often went viral, giving audiences a unique point of view and access to content they would never normally see. Schmidt is now partnered with Puma and Hugo Boss. She recently turned down a six-figure sponsorship deal with an unnamed company. The German Federation pays her just $700 a month. The Olympics are no longer the same as a century ago. More athletes, more spectators, and much more money. But the prices for the athletes, still the same. It's one thing that the IOC is not paying athletes directly, but giving the money to its member federations. But sometimes it looks like it's trying hard to make sure that the money stays as far away from the athletes as possible. Only recently, the IOC president complained about the fact that World Athletics decided to pay Olympic gold medalists prize money for the first time in history. It's like some officials are living in the past. 90% of Olympians only qualify for one Olympics in their whole life. Only have this one opportunity to win when the world is watching. It should be easier for them to make some money when the world is watching. The Olympics are like that blockbuster movie everyone talks about, filled with stars, drama, and eye-watering budgets. Yet when it comes time to pay the lead actors, the credits start rolling.